Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for June 9th, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss, and here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. This is the ES September contract, so this is the U 2016 contract, and we're rolling from the June 2016 contract. You can see we're still looking at the previous week's high here. For the June contract, it was 2106, now it's 2097, 9 handle differential there. And what we were talking about was, how is price going to respond above this zone? Is it going to be able to find acceptance, or are prices above this area going to be rejected? If prices cannot hold above the previous week's high, the expectation would be a rotation back toward 2073 and perhaps a move all the way into value and across the range. We have a very nice D-shaped profile here, balanced range that we've formed over time, and again, if prices cannot maintain acceptance above these prior highs, then we're likely headed right back to value being 2052 quarter at this time. So this is something that we'll be looking at. Since there's not much volume here flowing in just yet, we won't look at the intraday time frame, but right now the expectation is that bulls will continue to defend 2097 for attempts higher, but any rejections could lead to a stops run through those sell stops and push prices back toward the top of micro composite value and perhaps back to value. So that's something to look out for. Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for June 10th, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss, and here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. Looking at the ES here, we're on the U 2016 contract, so the September 2016 contract. And you can see right here, prices have finally fallen below the previous week's high price. We had 3 days here where prices attempted to hold above the previous week's high. We had bulls defending. However, they were not getting paid on the top end, and the stops came out here in pre-market and overnight trading. This is going to be important here as we head into the upcoming week to see if prices close below 2097. If prices close below this level, it will be an early idea Monday to see how prices react in overnight trading, as a retest could offer a selling opportunity for a continuation downward across the range back toward the top of composite value, rather the top of micro composite value at 2076s, followed by the potential to see a move into value on a composite basis at 2052 quarter. So this is what we mentioned before. We were looking for signs of rejection above the previous week's high for a likely return back to value, and so far we're seeing early signs of that right now with a break below the previous week's high. Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for June 13th, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. One thing we were looking at last week was how is price going to respond above the previous week's high price. I mentioned that while price was holding above that zone, there were sell stops below these lows, and if price could not hold, we were likely going to see a flush back toward the 76s, which is the top of the MC VPOC VAL. So that's the value area high on the MC VPOC. And one thing we mentioned was that if price does do that, any pullback is likely to be a selling opportunity for a likely push back across the range toward value, which is now 2052 quarter, and a shot at seeing microcomposite VPOC, which is 2040. So overall, we've seen the stops come out. We've seen a bit of a pullback, and we now have to see how is price going to respond near the 2076s in this zone, because bulls want to defend in this area to see if we can get another rise. But if price cannot get back above those 2096s, 2097s, any pullback short of that zone will likely be a selling opportunity for a push downward. So we're going to see where does the pullback come to. We do have a weekly pivot range here that is a higher value relationship, yet price is opening below that pivot range. So a push into this pivot range could offer an opportunity to sell and direct price back toward 2052. So that's one thing I'll be looking at. Obviously, if prices do continue to push downward, it could be an easy call to not only get back to value, but also work its way across the range toward the bottom of value, which is currently 2020. Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for June 14th, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. with analysis for the ES and a daily time frame here. Here's a look at the daily time frame. What we were looking at before was how was price going to respond once it failed to hold above the previous week's high. And this is where bulls were defending for several days, but they weren't getting paid on the top end. That implied that we could see price go offered through that area and not only come back toward the 2076s, these recent lows, but also down toward the 2052s and perhaps all the way back down to the bottom of value. So far, we've done a very good job of pushing down toward that area after early strength was defended the previous session. And that's what we were looking for, especially in the trading room. We talked about the higher value relationship week over week, but how price opened below, closed below that relationship, and rallied into it. This was defended, and steady weakness came as a result. Now what we're looking for is to sell rallies into new lows, and pullbacks have been defended again in overnight trading, but the idea is that more weakness will likely be seen. Any strength likely to be defended for a push back toward 52s. That's a composite VPOC. You also have 40 quarter here, which is MC VPOC, and then of course bottom of value, anything below 22s. So we could be looking at more weakness ahead. Again, any pullback likely to be defended back toward the previous week's low as 2079.5 for a shot at additional weakness ahead. Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for June 15th, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. Right now we've seen a steady continuation to the downside. We were looking for a move into 2052 quarters, and we got very, very close, getting to a low of about these 55s here, 54.75. So we got within a couple of points, 2.5 points of reaching that level, and we've seen a bounce off that zone right now. The early idea here is that any pullback is still likely a selling opportunity for a move across the range. This was the first area, the composite VPOC, to watch for a test. We also have the MC VPOC, which is 2042, and then the bottom down here, which is VAL on a micro composite basis. So that's the bottom of value. So coming from above value here, back toward value, the mission is not done. So we could see more weakness. However, given the early strength we're seeing in the test beyond the previous highs here, there could be a little bit more of a test up here, but any rejection, even as high as these 2079s, 2080s, that could be an area to defend and see another move across the range here. So something to look out for. We've started the week with some weakness after last week's sell-off through the previous week's high. That's exactly what we're looking for. We were looking for pullbacks to be defended, and now we're looking for more of the same. So this could be short-term strength here that leads to another round of weakness unless bulls can reclaim prices back above 2080. Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for Thursday, June 16th, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. What we were looking for in the previous session was for price to rally into or toward the previous week's low of 2079.5 and also the top of value on the micro composite basis, 2078. We're looking for bears to defend there, and we were looking for a push into 2052s, and we were looking for a continuation likely to the bottom of value. And so that's pretty much how it played out. We saw a push up into 79s. We got a push right down, and just in overnight trading now we're hitting our 2052s, and that was value. If you recall, I was talking about how we were looking for rejection up here. If prices couldn't hold above this level, we'd likely travel back to value, and so far we've done just that. And now the expectation would be that any pullback would likely be a selling opportunity as the market likely pushes across the range toward the bottom of the area down here, which could be in the 2022s or even lower. But for right now, very nice continuation so far, and further downside price discovery should be seen toward 2040 and 2022 over the coming days. Now, again, if prices are able to reestablish back above the 2079s, then we could see another attempt at higher prices. But for right now, we've been in a larger trading range market, and this trading range, despite the fact that we've seen higher highs time over time here, it's still a very clear trading range. And overall, we're going to likely continue to remain in that trading range until expansion occurs. So right now 44 quarter is MCV-POC. So it's just shifted up. If we trade lower, it'll shift back down, but I'm going to mark it because that's still important. So I'm going to update it right now. So here's 2044 quarter, and that is MCV-POC right now after a shift up. So for all intents and purposes, based off of our micro composite range, we have now reached value. So that's what we were looking for. So we did it. We finally did it. So what we're looking for was for these participants, if they didn't get paid, prices would get offered all the way back to values. And we finally did it on a shift up now. So that trade is pretty much done.